The morning they bulldozed my great-grandfather's bridge, I wasn't just angry, I was finished. Finished being polite. Finished answering their certified letters. Finished trusting the system. That bridge wasn't just stone and mortar. It was a legacy, my family's legacy. And when they tore it down without a word of warning, I made a decision no one ever saw coming. I would drain the entire lake their $4 million resort depended on. It started like any other Tuesday. 16. The lake still hidden under a blanket of fog. I was on the dock, coffee in hand, listening to the loons and the soft groan of damp wood. Then I heard it. A low, guttural rumble. Diesel engines. Through the mist, it appeared. A yellow bulldozer, moving like a tank toward the old bridge. 2 more trucks behind it. Men in vests, radios crackling. Hard hats. I ran. I yelled. It didn't matter. They had orders. They had paperwork. And they had her. Barbara Langston. President of the Oak Ridge Shores HOA. Arms crossed, fake smile, standing there in spotless white heels like she owned the place. You can't do this. I shouted. She didn't flinch. Her voice? Cold and calm. We already did. Barbara wasn't from around here. She moved in 2 years ago from Scottsdale, bought herself a lakefront mansion, and muscled her way to the top of the HOA board within 6 months. She was the type to call the cops on kids selling lemonade. The kind who used community standards like a weapon. But what Barbara didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the bridge they just crushed wasn't just historic. It was protected. My great-grandfather, Walter Dean, built it in 1924. Hand-cut limestone. An arch that connected our cabin to the main road. Back when there were no subdivisions, back before Oak Ridge Shores even existed. And in the attic of that cabin, sealed in a fireproof box, were the original deed records, survey maps. And most importantly, a water rights agreement signed by the county. That was the year the agreement was signed. It granted Walter Dean and his heirs perpetual flow authority over Lake Norwood. See, the bridge wasn't just a bridge. It sat above a secondary spillway. Walter didn't just build the bridge, he designed the dam, laid out the bypass channels, and engineered the entire water flow system. The HOA might have thought they controlled the lake. But legally? I controlled the water. They didn't know that yet. But they would. For 2 days after the demolition, I was in a blind rage. Then I did what any good engineer does when backed into a corner. I started researching. I called my old professor at Texas A&M, an expert in historical water law. I sent document scans to my cousin's wife, who works at the State Water Authority. I hired a licensed surveyor. What we discovered, that spillway, untouched for 50 years, was still fully operational. And still legally mine. Meanwhile, Barbara wasn't done playing queen. She fined me for having a fishing net on my dock. Said my mailbox violated HOA color codes. Claimed my shed was visibly weathered. Then she sent private security, her brother-in-law's company. Men with mirrored sunglasses and clipboards walked my property line, snapping photos of my gutters. So I flipped the script. I started documenting everything, every visit, every letter, every so-called violation. I filed a formal complaint with the state over their unlicensed security patrols. I submitted a public records request for the HOA's financial statements. That's when the real cracks started to show. $8,000 paid to Langston Consulting, Barbara's own firm. $5,500 to Norwood Maintenance Solutions, run by her nephew. Nepotism. It was all there, clear as daylight. But I wasn't ready to strike. Not yet. I was playing the long game. Across the lake stood the resort Barbara loved to brag about. Turns out, it was funded by a $4 million commercial loan. I dug up their environmental impact report and found one critical clause. If the lake level drops more than 18 inches below full pool for more than 72 hours, the bank can call the loan due immediately. That was my lever. So I called a meeting. I showed up at the next HOA board meeting carrying a banker's box, full of evidence. Original water rights, deed records, dated photographs of the spillway, and copies of the questionable payments. I'm not here to argue, I told them. I'm here to give you a choice. Barbara laughed. You're bluffing. No, I said. I'm draining the lake. Her face turned crimson. That's terrorism, she barked. No, I said calmly. That's maintenance. The board held a vote. One member abstained. The rest? They followed Barbara like sheep. She stood up, theatrically. Let it be known that Mr. Dean is a danger to this community. That night, I walked out to the old spillway, opened the access panel, and turned the valve. 3 full turns. Within 6 hours, the lake had dropped 11 inches. By noon the next day, the resort's boat docks were sitting in mud. Tourists were posting photos online. Dead fish, beach kayaks, exposed lakebed. By day 3, the bank pulled funding. Barbara panicked. She called an emergency HOA meeting. But this time, everything exploded. Half the homeowners were screaming for her resignation. The other half accused me of environmental sabotage. Then the sheriff arrived. Said he'd received an anonymous tip that I was tampering with public infrastructure. I handed him the paperwork. My great-grandfather built this system, I told him. Legally, I operate it. He read it. Twice. Then looked up and said, "This is way above my pay grade." Barbara still wasn't finished. She went on local news. Called me a dangerous extremist. Said I was endangering children, ruining property values, destroying the community. But the more she talked, the more people started digging. Turned out her husband's company had received over $30,000 in unapproved HOA payments. Her cousin had been given no-bid contracts. And her own guest house? Built 4 feet into a protected wetland zone. 2 weeks later, the county served her a restraining order. Misuse of funds. Abuse of power. Permit violations. Abuse of authority. The board voted to remove Barbara. She left town the very next morning. Her replacement? Mrs. Nora Caldwell. 82 years old, lived here since 1967. She asked me to help rewrite the bylaws. This time, with real respect for historical structures and community heritage. We rebuilt the bridge and renamed it Walters Crossing. 3 months later, the county approved it as a historic landmark. The resort? Reopened under new ownership. They reached out to me and negotiated directly. I agreed to manage water levels in exchange for preservation easements. We even launched a joint scholarship in my great-grandfather's name. 4 civil engineering students focused on sustainable water systems. Funny how things work out. Now, every July, we host Bridge Day. Live music. Catfish fry. Kids cannonballing off the dock. The same dock Barbara once tried to fine me for. And sometimes I just stand there, hand resting on the cool limestone rail, listening to the steady flow of water. But strong. Because here's the truth. Water doesn't care about power trips or politics. It follows gravity. It follows design. And it remembers who built it. So if anyone ever tries to bulldoze your legacy, don't just yell. Don't beg. Learn the system. Know your rights. And if they back you into a corner, let the water speak for you. Now tell me, what would you do if someone destroyed something your family built with their own hands? Would you fight back or walk away? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if you're dealing with an HOA nightmare of your own, stick around. Next time, I'll tell you about the rancher who used mineral rights to stop a billionaire from paving over her land. It gets wild.